See, it goes back, for instance, let's go back very quickly. Back to about 1789. In 1789, the so-called founding fathers set up a social construct in this country that said specifically, we're going to lock and box black folk in the country. We're going to lock and block you. That means that anybody else coming to this country, anybody that's coming to the country will be entitled to the basic benefits that they can get coming to this country. And they advertise all over Europe to tell people come to America. They get to one thing that they talk about today in TV and radio, they never explain to you. It's called the American dream. Nobody ever tell you what the American dream is. The American dream is come into America and get free land and free black labor. That's what the American dream is. Come to America and get unearned benefits, if you can get them. But say the only person in this country will not be able to get them, they're going to be black folk. They said most of those benefits are going to start off initially with land ownership, how much land you own. And so they set up a system of slavery in this system. In this society, it had a primary purpose that has never been addressed by our leadership in this country worked on. This whole purpose of slavery was to systematically social engineer black folk into the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game. It was designed to maldistribute almost 100% of all this nation's wealth, land, resource, privileges, business, income, controls of all levels of government into the hands of the dominant white society. That was the purpose of slavery. Nobody's ever addressed it. What black folk have done is say, well, we're not sure what racism is. Maybe racism means we can't get along with people. That's not racism. Racism is who owns and controls the resources, the wealth and the power. It's what you own and control that makes it determines your quality of life in America, not civil rights, not social integration. That has nothing to do with racism. It has nothing to do with determining your opportunities. It's what you own and control that will determine your opportunities in this society. And so when they set up that system in 1789, they said we're going to start off first with land. And so when they said that the land would be for those who are going to acquire wealth and power, because if you get land, you get the gold, the silver, the chromium, the wool, the bauxite, the magnesium, the gas, and the oil. And whoever gets the land gets the power and the wealth. Okay? And so immediately George Washington said, well, give me 100,000 acres of land. They gave him 100,000 acres of land. Then following him, Thomas Jefferson says, give me some land. I want 100,000 acres of free land, just like you gave to George Washington. And then when Patrick Henry heard that, Patrick Henry says, well, if you two are going to get 100,000, I want 65,000. He says, give me life and give me liberty, but also give me some land. So he got 65,000 acres of land and all the resources, the wealth, and every immigrant coming to the country, when it was advertised, come to America under the American dream and get free land and free labor. See, that's why Jackson says that black labor brings 90% of the value to the land. But say you black folk, you can't have the land, though. You can't get in it. So every immigrant came into the country that time, they got 650 acres of free land as soon as they hit the shoreline. That was through the Homesteading Act. They got another 150 acres of free land for every slave they owned. And every time when the land rush in the 1880s, and the Europeans came in and picked up over 2 million acres of land in 24 hours. So all together in this country, the society maldistributed almost 1 billion, B-I, 1 billion acres of free lands into the hands of everybody but black folk. When black folks started asking for 40 acres and a mule, they said, you get nothing. So black folk were forced to try to practice capitalism, owning and controlling without any resources. They're the only people in this country, and I want all of you who are not black to understand, they're the only people living in this country, and they're the oldest population that was forced to try to practice capitalism without capital, or owning the land. But when black folk came out of slavery, in 1865, at that time, even though they'd been systematically socially engineered into ignorance, it's been totally against the law for them to be able to be educated. And see, my family was raised in South Carolina, and that's going to relate that to that. But at that point in time during slavery, people like in South Carolina, the congressman said that we'll take every measure necessary to make sure no light ever enter a black person's brain. And so then they passed laws saying it would cost any people, any person, white, any color, teaching black folk to read and write would cost you $100 and 39 lashes with a whip. And that was imposed ignorance on black folk. To make sure, again, if we get the land and the resources, then we're going to make sure they don't have enough sense to be able to compete. But see, so when slavery ended, 96% of the black folk in the country could not even read and write. But from 1865 to 1920, those black folk, even though they'd been illiterate at that point in time, they raised the standard of their education, where black folks by 1950, black folk was one of the best educated people in the South at that time. And black folks set the record for educational achievement in the country that in between 1865 and 1895, black folk reduced their illiteracy rate from 96%. They couldn't read and write, they cut it down to 42%. But the problem is that educated, they never got the benefits of getting an education. Because in 1950, you see, a black man with an education or a black person with an education could only earn less than 50% of what a white high school dropout could earn. So, but black folk were still smart enough in 1865 to 1920. They said, we're gonna play this game the best we can, even though we've been mistreated and been mal-educated and non-educated. So they went out, so between that period, 1865 to 1920, they went out and acquired 20 million acres of land with no education. They bought, and how they got it, put their pennies together, nickels and dimes, sold flowers and pies and coal on the street, but they bought 20 million acres of land by 1920. But what happened, that even though they had been miseducated, undereducated, and then they have invested with land, they picked up made 20 million acres of land. But by between 1920 and 1950, they began to migrate up north looking for jobs in Detroit, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Gary, Indiana, to work in the tire plants, the factories, the chemical plants. And while in there, after the moving out of the South, they lost 19 million acres of that land. They're down and out about 300,000 acres of land in the entire United States. That's why they don't own practically nothing from Boston all the way to San Diego. You own practically nothing. But right now, still, 99.5% of all the wealth and resources in this country is still in the hands of the dominant white society. And 87% of that is frozen. You cannot get it. You cannot compete to get it. It's locked into their trust accounts, bank accounts, in stock. Business and corporations passed on from one generation to the next. And now that billion acres of land that they inherited, well, they didn't inherit, that was passed on by the people that got it initially at 1 billion acres of land. That land has increased in value, doubled and tripled in value every 20 years. So you're playing against a stacked deck. You never learn how to play this game. And I'm talking about this social construct. That's what led to the 1967 riots. And so in South Carolina, let you take it through the eyes of my being brought up in South Carolina. And see, my family in South Carolina, my family on my mother's side, they had land. And on my father's side, they had land. On my mother's side, what happened was that every time they went to try to use that land, hold on to the land, mysteriously, the courthouse with all the court records on land burned down 3 times in McCormick, South Carolina. So all the blacks in that 19 million lost, that's how most of the blacks lost their land. The courthouses kept burning down with all the records. And so now I go down to McCormick, South Carolina, the land my mothers used to have is now a golf course and a housing project resident. Then on my father's side of the family, they had almost 1,500 acres of land, bottom land, right at what we call Three Forks, South Carolina. And see, my great-grandmother wouldn't sell the land. So the community got ticked off with her, so they couldn't take it from the records. And so what they did, they called the Corps of Engineers to flood the property. They flooded the land. Now it's at the bottom of what they call Lake Clark. And they flooded the land and built a dam up called the Strong Thurman Dam nowadays. And that forced us out of South Carolina. And so that means that locked us out. That happened to us, but it happened to a lot of most of the blacks in the South. That's how that 19 million acres disappeared. Look at the education now. At that point in time, my family, one of those families, like most blacks in the South, have been deprived of adequate educational opportunity. And so my father only was able to get to the 3rd grade. He only could make it to the 3rd grade because in those point days, people wanted black people to work, not get educated. And so he went to the 3rd grade. My mother beat him, she made it to the 5th. And when I was very young, and I went to see my grandmother, who was 97 years of age, on her birthday. And I said, "How do you feel, grandmother?" She said, "I feel okay, son." She says, "The body is tired and worn out, but the mind is strong." So I said, "Well, what would you like for your birthday then, grandmama?" She said, "I would love to see the inside of a school before I die." But she'd never been to school not one day in her life. And so I talked to a couple of teachers, and they took her in. She sat in the classroom for 3 days. For 3 days. But she never been out of school, but she died happy. And she finally got a chance to see the inside of a school building. Because education was that important for black folk. Critically important to begin to compete in this social construct. And she died. And so later on, let's jump up a few years now, about 1948, see, blacks in South Carolina got a good feeling for something being wrong in the society.